Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Suleiman. Tonight, we'll be talking about the 6th European Union, African Union, or EU Summit for short, that is just about rounding up in Brussels as we speak. The 6th edition was scheduled to hold in 2020, but was delayed following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. President Buhari jetted out on Wednesday to the Belgian capital for the same summit and is due to return in the early hours of tomorrow. The 5th AU-EU Summit was held in November 2017 in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, where European and African leaders adopted a joint declaration for their partnership to focus on, among other things, 4 strategic areas. These are economic opportunities for youth, peace and security, mobility and migration, and of course, cooperation and governance. This year, however, the leaders discussed how both continents can build greater prosperity as they recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. The aim is to launch an ambitious Africa-Europe investment package that takes into account global challenges such as climate change and the current health crisis. They talk about so many other things, including renewed peace and security architecture for the continent. Of course, among other things that they discussed were thematic areas like growth financing, health systems and vaccine production, agriculture and sustainable development, education, private sector support, and economic integration. You know, for everything in Africa, the list is always long. The list of objectives and ambitions always long. But tonight we're asking, what about the list of achievement? What about actual issues on the ground? To what extent does such summit benefit us here in Africa, particularly those of us here in Nigeria? With me to discuss these issues are 2 people who are conversant with these situations. My first guest is Mr. Jide Ojo, a development expert, a public affairs analyst, and columnist with the Punch newspaper. Also with me is Mr. Hamisu Kabiru Matazu, head of the international desk Daily Trust. Welcome to you both.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
But before we launch into our discussions proper, we'll take a minute and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we are talking about the Africa-EU Summit, which President Muhammadu Buhari just attended, or is still in attendance in Brussels, Belgium. Mr. Jide Ojo, as we were discussing during the short break, you know, this is the 6th summit. We don't know the achievements of the first 3 summits since Cairo 2000. That's about 22 years now that we've been having these summits every 3 years. Is there any indication that this year things are going to be different?
Well, things are quite different, and it will continue to be different. Like you said in the background, this more like post-COVID.
Okay.
And for that singular reason, it's different because now you are talking COVID production, I mean vaccine production, which were not in the previous editions. I mean, the last one that was held in Côte d'Ivoire, they did not have that as part of issue. Then issue of peace, governance, and security. It's a global challenge. The terrorism is a global challenge. It affects much of Africa as it affects Europe now.
Okay.
And issue of migration and irregular migration, let me put it that way. Also, it's something that is a food for thought because it has a nexus with issue of insecurity. All manner of people go through the Mediterranean to get to Italy or Portugal or somewhere in Spain and then disappear. You don't know. They are not documented, and some of them have been known to constitute security risks to their host country. And so it's better to judge than to war. This is a meeting of two continents, if I can put it that way. We are talking of Europe and America. We are talking of colonialists and the colonists, because these are the people who started our development for over a century. Is it Belgium itself, the role Belgium played in DRC? Is it the British in Nigeria? Is it the French in Mali, in Chad, in Niger, in Cameroon, and all of that? So these are our former colonialists, and we are talking of the post-colonial situation of Africa, so to speak. And then you look at issue of trade imbalance. You look at
so how would all of these things become different this time around? That's the issue.
There will be agreements signed. There are bilateral site meetings that are being held. We saw President Buhari having a chat with his counterpart who survived the coup attempt a couple of weeks. Was it last week or thereabout? But I know there will be agreements signed. The private sector investment portfolio, we may in the coming weeks and months see some foreign direct investment coming in, arising from some, because there's the element of private sector participation in economic integration that is also being discussed. And then when you look at the issue of climate change, which affects every one of us, climate change, that's why Ikeazo was there, Sharon Ikeazo was taken along, the Minister of State for Environment, because again, arising from the last, COP26 that they held some time ago, there is now overriding interest about how do we deal with this issue of climate change. So, like you said, the meeting is ongoing. It's after the meeting that we'll know what are the kind of agreements signed, what are the kind of communique that is issued, and then how do we follow through with all of this? President Buhari, this will be his last attendance because this happens every 3 years. But we should even be thankful that his health has permitted him to even make physical appearance at this event.
Mr. Matazu, Mr. Judo just talking about how the relationship between Africa as a continent and Europe as another continent, and how that relationship has been structured by our colonial history, and the post-colonial movement that we're at least supposed to be in now. But some people would say that that colonial relationship is largely still there, that the relationship between African countries and European countries, there's a lot of that colonial relations, there's that imbalance in power, in positions, and so on. And that such summits, summits such as the Africa-EU summits, are in fact examples of the informal ways in which this relationship is, this colonial relationship is now manifested.
Yes. Many analysts are saying that this summit was forced to hold, so to say, though it comes off able to, after three years.
Yep.
But the interest that the European countries have on this summit has to do with what is going on now in Africa.
Interesting. So this is more or less like the very first summit.
Good.
All the previous ones were...
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you look at the trend of coups that are taking place in Africa, especially the sub-Saharan African, you will know that it's just like those countries, especially the Francophone countries, it's a revolt. It's a revolt.
Popular revolution,
yes.
by... Okay.
Yes, because you can see coup took place in the military took over in Mali.
Yes.
Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Sudan. Yes, all these French-speaking countries.
And Guinea as well.
And Guinea as well. And something that had never happened had happened this time around, where a French colony will send away their ambassador from their country.
The French ambassador.
French ambassador to Mali was sent packing, which had never happened in history. Also, if you look at the way now France is saying that it's going to withdraw
its troops
to terminate the Burkina operation in Mali, which has been there for over 9 years now. It's something that is a bad signal on the side of them. And the mercenaries that Mali hired from Russia.
Yes.
So I think it's glaring that they are seeing the threat of these Francophone countries moving away from French to other countries.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's an interesting perspective, because it throws up, the complications, the complexities of today's Africa as against even 3 years ago, in 2017, when they held the fifth summit. Now in Africa you have many players, many international players, each of which is strong, and is relating to African countries in very diverse and very strong ways. You have the EU itself, but also countries like China and Russia. They're all coming.
India.
But also India and other countries, that are also looking to come and have a bite of the African cake. Yes. So, does that change anything in the relationship between Africa? Is it that the old masters don't want to give way to the new masters? That is Africa exchanging one form of masters for another kind of masters?
Exactly. I should think so. Each of these, you recall that some time ago, we have African-China summit.
Yes.
We have had African-Russia summit.
Even Africa-US summit.
African-US summit. And African-Japan. And then you also need to understand, one very big power bloc within the EU is no longer there, which is UK.
Britain. So you have Africa, UK.
So as you are dialoguing with the rest of Europe, you have to also have private session with the United Kingdom or the British because of the Brexit and then the fallout of that Brexit.
Yes.
The bottom line is this. If whichever way, you put it very right, Sulaiman, Africa or every country, 54 of us in Africa, we are exchanging our masters. We are having new masters coming to fray. China is dominant. in terms of loans, in terms of
Investments.
Look at African Union building. It was donated by China. Where was Europe, who colonized many of us in Africa for over a century?
Yes.
EU never deemed it fit. EU has a parliament. EU has a commission. I mean, yes, you talk of European Union investment, what they call aid. Like we have EU a presence in Nigeria giving all forms of support. But when you come to the brass tacks, the one that is feeling the heat most is France. The French colonies, and you need to understand the history of the revolts, which Matazu talked about.
Yes.
The French adopted a different form of colonialism from that of the British. They adopted policy of assimilation, not association. The British adopted policy of association. But assimilation, what has now come very glaringly to many of the Francophone countries is that this policy of assimilation is a facade.
Absolutely.
It just paved way for France to exploit them and take away their resources. And now you could see that revolt in many of the Francophone countries, from Mali to Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, to Burkina Faso. And when you go to DRC, you go to Southern Africa, Sudan, and all of that, there's a wave of restiveness cutting across. And unless France, Britain, and all the other colonial masters in Europe have a rethink, they are most likely going to lose their overwhelming influence on their previous colonies. Because now we are looking for new masters. Russia is having an inroad into Africa. You see Nigeria-Russia Chamber of Commerce, led by this politician, Dr. Obiora Okonkwo in Anambra State. It was his major campaign flank that if they vote him to power in Anambra, it was going to influence a lot of Russian investment into the state. And so when you also look at the hypocrisy of the West, because when you say West, who are the West? We are talking of Europe and America. And the hypocrisy in terms of human rights, the hypocrisy in terms of international aid. Because when they tell you about 20 million in aid for Africa or 1 billion in aid for Africa, be sure that 80% of that gets repatriated to them via consultants that are imposed, via having to buy their products and all of that.
Thank you. I think that's one of the major changes in this year's summit.
Yes.
Previously, even as recently as earlier, late last year, during the COP26 summit that President Buhari attended, although that one was about climate change specifically, the dominant narrative in terms of the relationship between Europe and Africa was in terms of more aid to Africa, more assistance to Africa. But this time around, both sides of the divide, both African leaders as well as European leaders are no longer talking about aid. Yes. Everyone is talking about relating,
on equal basis.
On equal basis, on the basis of equality. So is that something that has that can be sustained for long, given that even though you can talk about equality on paper, but if equality is not manifested in terms of actual resources and power, how far can such talk go?
Well, it has been so for a very long time, but if you look at what is happening in Nigeria, let's take Nigeria for example, all the aids coming in has not made any difference.
True.
They have not made any difference. So I think giving it a trial, maybe to go on an equal basis may help, because looking at it now, look at it now. Low and medium income countries. Within 2020 alone, they have collected over $700 billion as loan.
From who?
From different
sources.
donors, yes.
Okay.
But the issue is that, what have they done with the money in Africa? Look at the issue of vaccines that we always go there to buy. That's why they were looking for patent rights to be producing them domestically.
So,
And
thank you very much. If you
Yes.
wanted to produce vaccines locally in Africa, do you need an Africa-EU summit? It's just to beg the patents and the copyrights up to
They have
the
been
intellectual
begging.
property. Do you need a
They
summit for that?
They have been begging for it.
Okay.
Because I remember even when the U.S. Secretary to the State came to
Yes.
Nigeria, it formed part of the demands from the Nigerian government.
Okay.
But yet, nothing had happened. So I think giving it a push at the summit will equally help. Because I think we can say that there is a bit of progress in this direction, because look at now on climate change. That 1 trillion donation by the European countries on climate change is something, because they have been dashing out money to pave way. Though every country you see coming in, calling for summit, calling for bilateral or multilateral relationship, they have back inside their mind, they have what they want to achieve.
Their own objectives.
They
Yes.
have their objectives. But the way we bargain it sometimes determines the outcome and how we will benefit it.
This leads us straight to the age-old criticisms against African countries in their appearances at international fora. You know, that they just pack up and go without due homework here at home and without consultations among themselves, you know, for a unified position on issues that are germane to the continent as a whole,
Yes.
rather than individual countries. Has there been any change towards this in this summit? Has there been any difference?
Unfortunately, no. I would have expected that ahead of this meeting, there would have been an African Union
Pre-summit
meeting where they will harmonize their position and go with a shopping list so that they speak with one voice. But again, there's nothing united in Africa because of our past colonial history.
Despite the African Union?
African Union is just a toothless bulldog. Has African Union been able to cope the wave of coups, for instance? You know, and let me say this, Sulaiman. Our major challenge is lack of innovation, technology, and what else should I say? We have not been very innovative in terms of science and technology. That's what I mean. What stops Africa? When we had this COVID-19 and the rest of Europe and America were setting up committees to produce vaccine, to see how they can work on COVID-19 vaccine, why didn't African Union also get countries in Africa to donate money and have a Africanized vaccine development?
Like Russia and China and other countries like that.
They did. China wasn't waiting on the West. It developed its own vaccine, which it was administering on its own citizens. Russia, when Russia discovered its own vaccine, the Western world was mocking it and saying it's ineffective. But Russia never cares. Russia is not begging Europe for vaccine now. Every one of them decided to paddle their own canoe. But Africa is looking for patent right to now produce on the continent. Meanwhile, you need to understand that when you are researching into vaccination, your samples will differ. And the Caucasians and Africans do not have the same pigmentation, which is why sometimes you find the efficacy level of some of the vaccine very weak.
In other words, some of the vaccines that were being administered here in Nigeria may not even be, is that what you're saying?
Exactly, because the samples through which these were developed were majorly the people in the climatic and in the temperate region.
The temperate regions.
But that's one. Two, I also want to bring to our attention this Father Christmas that Europe seems to be doing on issue of vaccine. Did you hear?
But they're not doing any Father Christmas.
No, wait. They did. They did under COVAX. But much of what they sent to us were things that are about to expire.
And also, only 11% of African countries have been vaccinated. So there's no Father Christmas.
Did you remember the almost 1 million doses that have to be destroyed?
Here in
because
Nigeria.
they were almost expiring by the time they were shipped to us. So they will look at the shelf life of some of the products. When it's like a month to expiration, they will now say, let's donate it to these monkeys in Africa. And then they will make a headline of it on their
That's
international media.
Yes.
But that's if you follow this vaccine hegemony since the outbreak of COVID-19, particularly in 2021 when they claim to have discovered the vaccines. Much of the vaccines that were sent to us, either we do not have the provision for storage. The cold chain that is needed for storage is absent here, or they were about to even expire. But what I'm saying, let's leave the issue of COVID-19 vaccine aside, but it's part of what is being discussed. I'm only saying that if we are able to innovate, research and development, if we take that and we have scientific breakthroughs, all the research institutions that are in Nigeria alone, if we are able to implement or mass produce some of those patented innovations, we will be able to compete fairly well in terms of trade relations. Today, the shout all over the African continent is make trade fair, trade fair, trade fair.
Exactly.
How can trade be fair? Because the President Buhari in his article...
In his article, yes. That's where I was going, that part of the idea of dealing with each other, because even the President's article was interesting in its own right, because it sort of signals the very first time that you see an African leader
look at the issue
writing
of EPA.
and pointing out, yes,
the
economic
where
partnership
Nigeria
agreement.
refused to sign, but many other Africans will sign.
Saying things as they are. In that article, the president pointed out some of the key imbalances in trade between Europe and Africa. One of them is that European countries, the European Union as an institution itself, tries to engage in bilateral trade relationships with African countries at individual or few country levels, which makes it difficult for other countries within Africa. How do such things, kind of harm the whole idea of a summit between the two continents? When you have EU dealing with, say, Niger Republic separately from Nigeria or Chad, all of whom are neighbors to Niger.
That was why I talk about interest.
Okay.
Those countries are not for all. They are specific on countries they needed to go and what they want from those countries they are going. So, if not of now, that they have seen a wind of change taking place in Africa. The wind is blowing, you can see, and they are afraid of it, actually. So, to us, to the Africans, in the past, we can say that that imbalance had affected many countries.
Okay.
Because they have not gotten what they should have gotten. But for now, the Europe and the world powers are looking...
Do you think that the presence of China and Russia that you are alluding to, have they really changed the landscape in Africa-EU relationships to the extent that the European countries will be afraid of the newcomers?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Because if you look at what China is doing in Africa, he made mention of the AU headquarters built by
the Chinese,
by China, and a lot of things. Because China put on the table, I think, $1 trillion.
That's serious.
For countries to access as loan.
African countries only,
African
or all
only.
countries? African countries only.
African
That's serious.
To access as a loan.
Okay.
And that made the US and the European countries to start coming in because they knew
So
once they allow China to have that edge over them, it will be very difficult for them to catch up. That's why BW3, the initiative or Chinese initiative, was countered by the American initiative, which America promised to come to the African countries and invest.
Thank you very much. So maybe we can take a short break at this point. When we return, we'll be looking at other aspects of this Africa-EU relations. For example, if Africa is talking about relating on equal levels with the European Union, maybe Africa should develop itself right at home at first. But that is when we come back, when we return in just a minute. Stay with us.
Productive Youth Network presents 2022 Youth Convention. Theme: Enhancing Youth Productivity Towards Self-Actualization and National Development. Date: Saturday, February 19th, 2022. Location: NAF Conference Center, Main Auditorium. Time: 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Speakers: Professor P.L.O. Lumumba, Sharifa Abiola, Serial Entrepreneur, Malam Milikulu Kari, GMD NMPC. Host: Engineer Mohammed Onutu, Founder, Productive Youth Network. Register your business for B2B opportunities and free exhibition. Registration is free. For more information, call 009 109 9127.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. If you are just joining us, you can also follow the discussion on all our social media platforms on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, Twitter, now that Twitter has returned. Mr. Jideojo, as we were saying, the Africans have gone to negotiate trade because even the president said it in his article that one of the most important things we should be looking to is how to expand the relationship in ways that will create jobs here in Africa.
Yeah, to stem regular migration.
To stem regular migration, to the jobs in Africa. But how can you create jobs when trade within Africa itself is just around 17%? The intra-African trade is quite low, probably the lowest of all the world's regional groupings.
Suleiman, this cannot but be so because of low technological innovations.
Okay.
We are afflicted by the same thing. With the exception of very few countries, maybe South Africa, maybe Egypt, and a couple of others. Which country? I mean, let's talk about this trade. I did an article in my column, and I was like, okay, how can Nigeria gain from the Director Generalship of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as the head of World Trade Organization.
Yes.
She said, when she came to Nigeria last year, she said, look, for you to expand and take maximum opportunity of trade opportunities, you need to innovate. You cannot be producing raw materials and exporting these raw materials. You look at the agricultural value chain. It's still basics. You produce cassava, you export it. You cannot extract starch, industrial starch. You cannot, all these pharmaceutical products that you can extract, you just export it the way it is, in their natural form. Yam, at some point, it was the part of the law, this administration was claiming that they have been able to export yam to US. When you could do value addition to those agricultural produce, the same thing with solid mineral. When you look at Nasarawa here, Nasarawa has over 34 solid mineral in commercial quantities. Yeah, that's why they call them solid, home of solid minerals. But when that is largely dominated by artisanal miners who are not even registered with government, which is fueling insecurity, as we have seen with the case in Zamfara. But beyond and above that is when you explore this thing, instead of you to set up factories where this solid mineral will be processed into either finished or semi-finished products, you export it in that raw form. You cannot hand sufficient foreign exchange by not adding value to whatever you produce. Look at our issue with crude oil. The oil and gas sector. We fly away. We have been flaring gas for over 50 years. This is the same gas you need to power turbine to produce electricity. But you are flaring it away because there is no value addition. The federal government, the president just declared a decade of gas last year. A decade of gas, when we have been flaring this gas for over 50 years. We discovered fuel, crude oil in 1956 and started commercial transaction in 1958 or thereabout. But up till now, we are still flaring and charging very limited, nonsensical amount as a penalty for gas flaring. We have missed all the dates.
And still suffering from gas emission domestic and rises in prices.
That's how we are contributing to climate change.
Yes.
Climate change. But let's also go into the oil, the crude oil. Today, we are suffering polluted oil, which has created a very big inconvenience and disruptions, economic disruption in the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
Because this thing was imported, we exported crude to those countries. Did you know that this
from the same Belgium.
Adulterated fuel is from
the same
Antwerp.
Belgium where, yes.
It's from Antwerp in Belgium.
Yes.
But did they have crude oil there?
No.
We export to them. Now they are giving us polluted crude, polluted PMS, premium motor spirit. This is why I'm saying, without innovation, without the science, technology, and innovation, we will continue to be beggarly in our summits, because we have gone with some wish list now. Nigeria will be saying this is what is up. We are not even speaking with one voice under the African Union. So they have discovered that, and they are doing the policy of divide and rule. So you find out that for many African countries who largely depend on foreign aids, they cannot speak out their minds in where Nigeria is speaking out. Malam said something that the impact of aid in Africa is very minimal. It has to be so, because, for instance, all the international aids Nigeria is getting is less than 1% of our budget.
Of our own budget. Indeed, it's like Nigeria doesn't receive any aid.
It is 60-70% of the budget of some other countries.
African countries.
They run their elections for them, 100%. They run their other sectors of their economy, education, almost 80-90%. So they are like dominant. And you cannot speak with one voice under that, because if you say, look, let's resist these people.
This brings us back to France again in particular, but also to the African Union as an institution. It, because one of the major themes of this is this summit is the coups that are returning, in quotes, in Africa. That in the past 2 years or so, you have had 7 successful and attempted coups combined.
Yes.
But the African Union and ECOWAS, some people are alleging, have not treated these issues with the same equally. For example, they have sanctioned Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea, but not Chad.
Chad, yes.
So fingers are pointing at France and the large influence that France tends to have on ECOWAS, but also on Francophone African countries and the African. Well, to what extent does that talk about or speak about equal relationships between the countries? When you have African Union suspending some countries for having a coup, but not other countries for having the same coup?
Well, the suspension by EU and ECOWAS, by AU, sorry,
Yep.
and ECOWAS, I think it's not making any impact even.
Okay.
Because look at what is happening now. All these countries that were sanctioned, just, I think, yesterday,
Okay.
the president of Burkina Faso was sworn in. Despite all the sanctions, all the talks.
The new military leader?
Yes.
Interesting.
So, to me, as he rightly pointed, they are toothless bulldogs. There is nothing they can do. And if you look at the leadership of the AU and the ECOWAS, are still the same people that have been violating the constitution of their countries.
Interesting.
Some of the presidents amended their constitution and extended their tenure in office.
So some of the coups are actually a result of bad governance
Bad
and
governance.
unconstitutionalism.
Yes.
Okay.
So what is happening now is left for the AU and the ECOWAS to go back to the drawing board and see how they can maybe reshape their leadership for them to make impact. First, because I believe most of these African countries will not accept them the way they are.
Okay.
And no matter what sanction, no matter how hard they try to change things, will not happen because of the impression people have about those leaders. So that's one thing. And about the preferential treatment
Between Chad and the other African
and
countries.
other African countries. Yes, many analysts see it as some are looking at it as if the leadership of the ECOWAS, or EU, I can say, AU, I can say,
The African Union.
the African Union, is led by somebody sponsored by Idris Deby.
Okay.
He was there, and he's protecting the interests of Deby still.
Okay.
That's why he was not. Chad was not
It
sanctioned.
was not sanctioned. Even though the same thing happened
Even though
in
the same
Chad as
thing
in other
happened.
African countries.
So there's these allegations.
Okay.
And those military leaders in the other countries have that grievances. That why not Chad? Why us, not Chad?
Interesting. Thank you. So, Mr. Ojo, one of the things that European countries are genuinely interested in this summit, one of their core objectives is to stem the migration of Africans into European capitals. All of them have this issue. They don't want Africans or more Africans coming into Europe. Particularly, they don't want people taking hazardous journeys across the seas and across the Mediterranean to cross from Africa because it causes a lot of embarrassment anytime there is a boat size and so on. So what can Europe do or work with Africa to do to actually bring an end to this? Because the idea of I want to go to Europe, even here in Nigeria, is a very strong motivation up to this moment.
Well, there is no easy way to stem in that tide.
Okay.
Because the push factor has to be eliminated. And the push factor is bad governance, poverty, unemployment. So generally, how do you tame that? The reason why people will risk their lives to go to Europe and America is because they believe there's a golden fleece over there that they are going to pluck.
But is it always true?
Of course not. Okay. It's delusional. Okay. It's a delusion. Okay. Many of them die in the Sahara deserts before they even get to the Mediterranean. But see, if there has not been regime change in Libya, which is one of the countries, Libya and Morocco are the major countries where if there has not been a regime change in Libya, the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi, as at the time he was still the president of Libya, this issue was not at this level. Even the issue of insecurity in the Sahel that we are discussing today is part of the regime change that took place that led to the proliferation of small arms and light weapons which have found their way down to Nigeria and, of course, worsening our insurgency fight in the northeast. So the point is you cannot blame West as being indirectly responsible for some of these. And you ask for it. So when you encourage bad leadership in Africa, when you are not promoting good governance, when you are also indirectly supporting some rebel groups against the constituted authority of a country, these are the fallout. Because, I mean, the first law of nature is self-preservation. And you have graduates who have no job. We have perpetual underdevelopment. So what is the solution? If they can invest in infrastructural development in Africa, whatever they want to get in exchange for it. Look at China. China is doing a lot, helping with infrastructural development on their own terms and conditions anyway, with loan facilities. But they don't give you the money. They come with even their own workers, technicians, who can be found in Nigeria to come and do the job because they don't trust us sufficiently enough to do a thorough job. But if the rest of Europe will have the same mindset of infrastructural development, which can have a ripple effect of private sector, because no government can employ all the people that needed them.
Thank you very much.
So, but if they create the enabling environment, they contribute to peace and security in Africa. They also approve of sanctions of bad leaders when they are tinkering with their constitution, trying to amend to have third terms, as the case of Alassane Ouattara in Côte d'Ivoire. the case of Rwanda and Paul Kagame, and a few of others who have also tinkered alongside because this is what precipitated the coup in Guinea,
even in Sudan,
particularly
in Guinea, yes.
When Alpha Conde decided to have a third term at an octogenarian, I don't know whether he wanted to die in power. These are part of what led to the insurrection, because you silence all the opposition. Liberal democracy, as we see in Europe, is not what is practiced in Africa.
Absolutely.
Look at it. We are at the threshold. We are on the eve of our election. The issue of electoral reform has not been consummated. We are still begging the president to sign the electoral bill, and this has put preparation for 2023 election in a limbo.
Yes.
And this is why the president needs to do the needful, calm the tension, allow his party convention to hold, so that all the structures of the party will have leaders.
So I think,
but these are part of what they need to put their aids, Europe, what they need to fund. And when they meet at summits like this, is to speak truth to power, to discourage these leaders from undermining the constitution of their country. The rule of law is universal. 3 elements of rule of law: supremacy of the law, equality before the law, and fundamental human rights. And this must be promoted across the African continent. Apart from infrastructural development, issue of innovation, science and technology, which can help stimulate private sector and create the necessary job, because without the jobs, people will look for it anywhere it's available.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Hamisu Kabiru Mutazu, for coming on the show. Thank you once again, Mr. Jido, also for coming. This is where we draw a curtain. The message for today's episode is, well, as much as Africa and African countries look to Europe or look to Russia and China, charity begins at home, and so does development. If African countries can take care of all the issues of development right here from home, then they will be strong enough to operate and to relate with anyone else across the world on equal basis. Nothing less will be acceptable. Thank you. When we meet again tomorrow, on Monday next week, we'll be bringing you another edition of Daily Politics on Trust TV. My name is Suleiman. See you.